Hello and welcome to another Tinto Talks video. Today we're going to be talking about all of what Tinto Talks has been talking about when we talk about logistics. Of course, we had on Wednesday the logistics dev diary, which I have here in the background that you can see. And there was a lot of, I wouldn't say confusion, but there was a lot of questions. There was a lot of responses, as there always is, because Johan is legitimately prolific when it comes to responding to questions. And there is a lot to talk about, a lot of clarifications and even some potentially changes that are coming to the system based on community feedback. So this should be a good one. So if you want to help me out as I continue to trawl through the Tinto Talks comment sections to find the juiciest bits of information for you to glean more information about this glorious game, then hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, like, comment, all of the standard YouTube gubbins and garbage. And let's get into it. So, to start off with, would there be any way to bypass the need for supplies by relying on living off the land? Like Napoleon's army or hordes, for example. Disadvantages of that could be higher attrition for staying in one place, etc. So that's what you do when you don't have food. And it works about as well as it did for Napoleon in Russia. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Though we also do know that there is a way for armies to steal food from the places that they are invading. We do know that if you are going to siege the provincial capital, then you can steal the food out of there. Though I would argue that if, it's not really bypassing the need for supplies, that is just a way to resupply your dwindling supplies, which, you don't want to be running out when you're sieging that provincial capital. You want to, just top up your already ample stocks, more so. Army movement. How does it affect you when you're on forced march? Does your army get even lower morale? Well, there is no forced march in Project Caesar in EU5. If you want a forced march, then you drop your auxiliaries and artillery behind and march. And in a later comment that I haven't put into my list of comments to show, he does say that there is going to be on the UI a couple of buttons that you can press to instantly drop both auxiliaries and artillery. There isn't a button for both of them, but there's a button for each of them. So if you want to force march, then, I don't know, you press GH and then your guys go faster. Yeah, something along those lines. I do think we are getting fully customizable keybinds. So if that is true, then, it could be whatever key combinations work best for you if you want to go and do force march. Maybe NM. That might work, because NM is like force march in EU4. It could work. It could work. Is there anything which stops you from removing all units from a commissioned army except one and reassigning them to another army under another leader? If that army is in that location, then yes, it's fine. The cooldown is on the character, not the unit. And a bit later, we're going to go into, I'd say, a little bit of controversy, a little bit of, I wouldn't say community backlash, but there is a lot of these respectfully disagrees on a couple of Johan's comments, specifically referring to the amount of time it takes for a leader to get to an army and how he needs to be in the same location as something you own, right? You need to be in an owned location to assign a general. People didn't really like that, and maybe that's going to be something that changes. But we'll get into that in a bit. Speaking of multiplayer, in EU4 you can create separate group chats with commands and such. These days, this would appear to be lost knowledge in the MP community. I knew this existed. I did know this existed, but I don't think I've ever used it. Or if I have, it's been a very long time. Would it be possible to exist in Project Caesar? So, he's a huge fan of a good in-game chat, and yes, they will have one. It's funny that the first game from Paradox to not have the in-game chat along their more recent, I have no idea of pre-Victoria 2, for example. Did EU2 have an in-game chat? I have actually no idea. I have no idea if it even had multiplayer. But of the more recent games, the first game that Paradox made that did not have an in-game chat, it was Imperator. And this is something that I'd asked him about at some point before. Basically, there are graphics in the Imperator files for an in-game chat. but the functionality for it was never made, because while Imperator was being made, CK3 and Vic3 were also being made at the same time, and Johan was just gonna kind of nab the code from those for the in-game chat, and neither of them made one, so Imperator came out without one either. Wild, actually wild, but I am so glad that, multiplayer chat is going to return to Paradox games, because, yeah, no, multiplayer was made a lot more difficult in Imperator because of it. In CK3, multiplayer is just kind of not great anyway. And in Victoria 3, I guess you have to use your real-life diplomatic charismatic skills, and, well, we're Paradox gamers. We don't have those. So, yeah, I'm really glad to see in-game chat come back. Obviously, it was a terrible thing that it has been missed for, 6 years, 5 years now. Crazy. Moving on, will be some mechanics related to mercenaries, such as shifting allegiances, etc. Yes, you can bribe mercenaries. Same as in Imperator. You bribe a mercenary, your opponent is going to get an event saying, this guy's trying to bribe your mercenaries. Will you, counter-offer and also give money to keep these mercs on your side? If no, then you lose your mercenaries. That's how it works in Imperator. I can't imagine it'd be too much different in EU5. It's nice that sieges can, in theory, fail, but the risk of using an updated EU4 style siege is the frustration of the perma minus 42% siege, especially in the early game. Maybe how assaults work can mitigate this, but I think folks were hoping for a Crusader Kings style maximum time. We literally weren't. No, this is pure. No, this is nonsense. This is nonsense. Crusader Kings sieges fucking suck. CK2 sieges suck. Victoria 2 sieges suck. Having a guaranteed, I just know I need to wait here for this amount of time and I can save for like random events that may happen. I know roughly how long this siege is going to take because it tells me, and I've got a bar that's ticking up, and when it reaches the end, then it's done. That's fucking terrible. That is awful. EU4 sieges may be frustrating, but they're far more realistic than just a bar filling up. That was, yeah. Johan saying here, the one in CK sucked. It was the same in Victoria 2. Just makes it guaranteed to win. Yeah, it does. And it's dumb. It's just a progress bar ticking, which is purely unrealistic. And yeah, Johan designed the one in CK 1 and 2 and Vicky 1 and 2. He doesn't say that he designed the one in EU4, but I can't imagine he didn't. I'm pretty sure he did that as well. I just find it wild to think that this guy thinks that people were wanting a CK style maximum time the siege can last. That's wild to me. No, we definitely weren't. It's like everything to do with EU5 looks like it is trending in the way more realistic direction, and then being like, yeah, but you know what? I think we wanted something that was way less realistic, just for this one bit. Like, nah, just definitely nah. Lovely. Dev Diary is always, yeah, I always agree with that. I like seeing a comment that starts with this kind of sentiment. Hoping the sieges would be more like CK3. No. You were doing so well, and now you're doing so poorly. What the heck? Perhaps adding different phases where your troops build up siege works and trenches to the wall and try to breach it. The defending garrison has a supply of food available, blah, 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 blah. While random dice rolls that tick up the chance to surrender works, yeah, and it works better than CK3s. Obviously. I was hoping for something more involved and inspired, like the Kings and Generals type videos. I love this channel, and I do wish like a lot of the warfare that we experience in games would be, sort of look like that and feel like that. But I just don't think that's really possible. But yeah, saying different phases and they build siege works and trenches and breaches and such, it's basically what dice rolls are simulating. Dice rolls depending on how the food supply drop, or use siege works to create breaches, or morale drops for defenders, etc. I mean, I hope for CK3 rather than EU4, and then adding this. So you're wanting EU4. Sure, everything can be expanded further, but like, right now, what we've got in EU4 is the best siege system that we've yet had in a Paradox game. So I don't see it really changing. I'm impressed with the logistics system. It seems like an expanded version on Imperator, which I liked a lot. Disappointed that sieges are rather unchanged. Why? Sieges should be RNG. You can't really simulate the mind games. I I don't know. RNG is really not the word I'd use. I mean, I guess it quite literally is because you're rolling a dice, and that's definitely RNG. But having these non-deterministic outcomes to each of your dice rolls, seeing what all the different potential things that could happen during a siege. I mean, you don't want it to be the same every single time. You don't want it to be, two sieges will take exactly the same amount of time because I started them at the exact same time and the entire system is purely deterministic and just ticks up. I mean, I don't know why people are asking for this, but it seems like these replies that Johan is making are way more liked than disliked. So I can only imagine that if I go on to this guy's comment, it will be disliked. Maybe I'm not going to, but I don't understand this kind of sentiment, to be honest. Regarding desertion, if the war's going badly, can troops desert from armies even without food shortage? Not really. What not really means? Like, is it a no, or is it a... I mean, maybe there's a mechanic that might be somewhat similar to this, but I'm not talking about it yet, so I'm going to say not really. I don't... Just... Yes or no? Regarding coastal sieges, since enemy fleets help to speed up and supply armies, do friendly fleets increase fort defense and supply castles with reinforcements and food to hold out longer? Partially, yes. I'd love to get more information on this. What do they do? What if I have a fort by the coast and my ships are also off the coast? I have naval dominance. What is that doing specifically to that siege? I would love to know what the effects are. Because, yeah, this one, Siege of Candia, lasted 21 years because they could supply the castle from the sea. How long, roughly, are we going to be able to extend sieges because of this? Because I feel like a 21-year siege... I mean, if that happens in EU5, I'm going to be livid if I'm the one sieging it. I'm going to be absolutely elated if it is my siege that I am being besieged, and I can just laugh at my opponent. But yeah, I'd love to get more information on this. Between the population and the army and a location, who gets the food first? If it's not enough food, feed both. Does it give a percentage to both? So he says locations first. And while that... it's wrong. I can't really put it any shorter terms than that. It is wrong. Because as we can see here, he checked the code. The order was wrong. The armies should always steal it before the pops. So the answer to between population, army, and location, who gets food first, it is the army. And, so he goes into that. Very nice. Thank you for the clarification there. And then somebody was like, but wait, when your armies are stationed in your own provinces, could we have the option to give the food to the province into the army? Do you want to tell the guys with the weapons that they have to starve so the people without the weapons get their food? I feel like that's fair. That's fair. That pretty effectively, answers that question there for us. So yes, armies get food first. Makes sense. Loved the DD as always, as per usual. You said if your army's in a hostile location when you cannot get local food, you can try to trace the access up to 2 locations away. Does it also apply to navies? Yes, it does. Does 2 locations away mean 2 between you and the friendly location, or the friendly location is the second one? The friendly is the second. So, if the 3 letters of the are locations, this is the easiest way that I have to show this. You are in location T, and the food is in location E. If the food is in location space, you can't reach it if you are T. You got to get it from E. It was the easiest way I had. I'm sorry. I maybe should have chosen something better, but whatever. That's it. About sieges, I assume the defenders also have a stock of food and can run out of it. No, it's abstracted. But we'll get back to that. And do defenders also get resupplied from a navy if there's no blockade? Yes. Resupplied with what? I suppose we do know that the buildings for forts, castles, and such, they do have upkeep of goods, and when they run out of those goods, if they can't retrieve those goods, then they will work less good. Maybe this is what is being mentioned here. But if we move on to this, does fortified location that doesn't have food stockpile fall faster? Yes. So which is it? Do the defenders have a stock of food? No. Or yes. Which is it, Johan? We need the answer to this. I'm confused. Do forts have a stockpile of food or not? I don't know the answer, because you've given contradictory answers to that question. If you could decipher this a bit better, maybe it's something about, and can run out of it, or something about the abstraction. If you could decipher this any better than I can, then feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Or Johan, if you would like to, just write me on Discord. Tell me what am I missing here? Do forts have food or not? I don't know. Maybe. We'll move on, though. Do logistics units take up frontage and thus make the army move slower? Yes, they use frontage. Why the choice for logistics units and not supply lines as routes that can be cut? So, logistics units, as the game is from the 14th to the 19th century, and there was not really any supply lines in warfare back then. Maybe you had a supplying army with extra food and supplies trying to march to link up, but there were no supply lines like in World War II. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that's fine. I think it would also be very, very easy to add this in a mod. I honestly do. Because we know that, an army can take food from up to 2 provinces away. And that 2 provinces away can be a supply hub. What if you just added that same code to the supply hub, that a supply hub could take food from 2 provinces away from another supply hub, and then have a chain of supply hubs, which would be your logistic route? I feel like that could totally be done in a mod, and I think that would work pretty nicely. But yeah, this makes sense. It's a decent enough explanation. Does assaulting forts require to spend a resource, or the only cost with the manpower that is lost? It's just dead people. So breach and assaulting in EU4 is a very strange little mechanic. Obviously, you're spending military mana to breach, which is not going to be the case in EU5. And then you're also spending military mana to, assault the fort, which is also, mana doesn't exist. So the way that you are going to be assaulting forts is you wait for the right dice roll on your sieges to get the breach, and then you click the assault button and hope that you're successful. Hopefully assaults work just a little bit different in EU5 because, I don't know, they're not great in EU4, I would argue. There's also due to scorched earth of the Russian farmers and the Russian armies, talking about that question we had right at the very beginning. Not this one, not that one either. The one about Napoleon. Yeah, I've lost it. Never mind then. But yeah, living off the land was important in the 30 Years' Wars. It allowed the Wallenstein to keep fighting. Wallenstein's the general, not the Wallenstein. To keep fighting, and not just him, both armies on both sides for years. And yeah, you just take control of a provincial capital and loot the food there. Makes sense. I think that's a little bit different to living off the land, as was posed in the original question. And like I say, I mentioned, take the provincial capital and steal the food from there. Makes sense and works. And, if you are... Maybe we could have a thing where Scorched Earth would be... You are able to take the food out of a provincial capital and, have it transported to an adjacent province, or get your armies to loot all of the food that's there and take it with them, and then, when your enemy reaches that province, takes the provincial capital, they'll find it empty. That could be a way to simulate the scorched earthness. Important question I have about sieges. How viable is the strategy of hit the enemy, sieging a fort to weaken them here? I know in EU4 it's not very useful because even if you deal much more damage, the second you retreat, it counts as a defeat, and the siege army gets a 7% increase in the surrender chance. Can we do hit and run tactics here without worrying that it will make the fort fall faster? It's a fantastic question, actually. There's no such impact in Project Caesar, so if you are attacking a enemy that is sieging your fort, and, you lose that, you're not going to give your enemy extra siege progress, which is good. I think that is, good. Makes it easier, or it doesn't make it easier, but it makes it better. If you have a small but very well professional army that will not win in a battle, but can do more casualties, it might be worth just doing these hit and run away again tactics on somebody sieging. Especially if there's some kind of, debuff that an enemy army gets if they're sieging, which I feel like there should be. cause some unlucky ticks where you skip the attrition in mountainous terrain, where you have to move, basically, yeah. Imagine that units will lose less morale when marching through temperate flatlands while having increased consumption in mountainous campaigns. I like this idea a lot. I like this idea and especially quite a lot. Because we know that when you are marching, your army is losing morale while just because of movement. And I asked Johan this on Discord. He said that it is hourly ticks that your army is losing morale, which made me think that you are going to have instances where, you know, your army is in one location and then in an adjacent location there's an enemy army, but it's going to take like 3 or 4 hours to, you know, make that distance, or even more than a day. The person who attacks is going to lose morale while it's marching there, which means that entirely equal armies, the defender will have the advantage, which I actually really kind of like. I do like that. But yeah, no, this unfortunately, while I think it's a great idea, you know, losing more morale if you are going through mountains, increasing consumption if you're in the mountains, I do like that idea a lot, but unfortunately that is not going to be the case, and it is purely the amount of time that you're marching that is going to change the amount of morale you lose and such, which is a little bit unfortunate, and the responses to that kind of agree with my sentiment. Will units take some attrition while in enemy territory, even if they still have food? This did not happen in Imperator. If you had all of your food, you would take no attrition. However, yes, you will. Food doesn't help you against winter, storms, or the scorching sun. Also, disease. Disease was a major killer. I'd say I think it's like the majority by like 2/3. The primary killer of soldiers during this period. Dysentery in war camps and such. So taking some attrition, even if you have food, makes complete sense. Especially, you could have it so the longer you're staying in one place, the more attrition you take, which would be kind of wild. But yeah, this is good. This means that even if you have full food, you are sieging an enemy camp, sieging enemy fortification, you're still going to be taking attrition, which means that even if you supply your army with all the food in the world, you can still fail that siege. You can still run out of troops, which is kind of very interesting. On the topic of food, will the economic system have something like seasonal harvests that determine how much food a nation produces each year in stores and trades, instead of provinces just having magical devastation bar which solely refills independent of the climate and other factors? I'm not sure what he's talking about, this random economic bar, but yes, there will be seasonal food, making more food, harvesting more food in the summer, less in the winter. Imperator added something quite similar. Going to be interesting to know how it works, because in Imperator it was more a case of, or it wasn't in Imperator, it was in Imperator Invictus, the mod for it. But it didn't really affect things too much. You didn't really have to do anything to mitigate anything. All it really did was every winter you get a pop-up that your location was running out of food, and then it would be fine again. The pop-up would go away, and you didn't really do anything about it. If a war takes years, is it possible for levies to slightly replenish a home so you can raise levies for a second time? Yes, you can in fact do that. You can't you can't reinforce those levies, but you can hire new ones, which is interesting. The demob remob from Victoria 2 somewhat making a return here. 2 questions. The morale recovery tick, is it monthly? No, it is daily. If you keep troops too long on a transport ship, will it take attrition? Yes, makes sense. Assault in EU4 end when either side runs out of infantry or morale, which leads to failed assault sitting there with cavalry and artillery while the army reinforces again. Will Project Caesar assaults work the same, or will attackers stop before they cripple their sieging army? So the way they fix that is morale damage is far higher in Project Caesar while assaulting, which means you are either going to win or lose faster. Because you don't have to get the enemy garrison to 0 troops, you can get them to 0 morale as well, which is, I mean, this guy didn't know it, and I think quite a few people know it. because it's very rare that it happens. But yeah, morale is another way to win assaults, and if morale damage is higher, then great. That means assaults aren't going to take as long, which means that if you are assaulting a fort and there is an enemy army around, you're going to be able to win that assault before they get there, usually. And if you don't, then I guess you just put on Sabaton Winged Hussars and have fun with that. Does each province have a capital location? Yes. Every province has a provincial capital. Is it only important for capturing in a war, or does it have other mechanics tied to it? Not much, other than it's the food connector point, which is a word that we haven't used yet. A term that we haven't used. Yeah, it's where the food's stored for the province. In practice, will we have auxiliary armies of donkeys going back and forth between food locations and supply depots? Does the automation allow to prevent always depleting food at the same location? These armies will have no morale, as they will always move without taking rest. All of this I would like an answer to this, but all we got the answer to was if they run out of morale because of movement, they will stop moving. Okay. I'd still like an answer to this, though. Can you loot enemy supply depots? This is not just provincial capitals, this is the supply depots that you can place down. Yes, you can. If a province with a supply depot is sieged, the food that is in that supply depot will go to the province that it is currently in, is what I understand. I think there's a comment that we'll get to in a moment for that. How does supply work when the war's over and you have an army deep in your ex-enemy's territory with limited food? You can disband it or march home, or enforce food access in the peace treaty if you don't want to starve. So we're getting a little bit of diplomacy. What different diplomacy will be in the game, which is awesome. Presumably how it was before, they added spend X to create a breach, and it will now be down to a lucky dice roll for how you get breaches in walls. Yes, there's no magic mana to shatter the walls with a fireball like in EU4. It also made no sense because, well, if you are sieging with cannons, an enemy fortress, enemy fortification, style fort, castle, whatever, your cannons are going to be going all the time. You're not going to be like, they're just not just going to sit there and then you're thinking, you know what? I think we should breach the walls. Hey, cannons. Revolutionary idea. How about we breach those walls? You're not going to be doing that. They're going to be firing all the time. Breaching the walls is already going to be their goal. The reason that those cannons are in that siege. So I think leaving it up to the lucky roll is for the best anyway. But moving on. When you say ships can blockade a coastal province, what exactly do they do? Do they cut off trade so there's less food flowing into the blockaded province, so it's harder for the defenders to hold out the siege? Or are you just adding a magical +2 to the dice, similar to E4? Both and more. More. I'd like to know more about the more. Tell me more about the more. I need more. But yeah, getting, better dice in sieges, I don't see the problem with dice in sieges. It seems like maybe some people don't like it. I don't understand why not. And that's another thing. There you go. Another reason to write in the comments below. Do you like sieges in EU4? And I'm not talking about getting frustrated that you're not rolling well enough to win the siege fast, or getting frustrated that the enemy is always sieging faster than you because you can never win a siege race against AAI. I'm talking about just like the mechanics of sieges. Like, do you like them? Do you dislike them? I like them, even though I do get frustrated when I lose siege races, and I do get frustrated when I, for the 7th time, fail that 42% roll. But I think mechanically they work, and I think it is realistic that a commander might get frustrated at his failure to take a fort. I just do. Few questions. Does food from your nation... food get from your nation to the supply depot, ignoring what's in between? No, it does it by armies moving food into it. Can a nation have a defensive social value or some advance have guerrilla warfare, able to destroy or damage supply depots in its own territory? Nope, you can do it with small armies. Related to last week's Tinto talk, is it possible to capture broken units in battle, or do they simply die or flee? There is a prisoner mechanic, but we can't talk about it. But I'm gonna... because I wanna. There are two ways that one can read this. Either we have a character prison like in Imperator Rome, where you can capture enemy characters and, you know, hold them and, you know, ransom them, etc. Which, on the surface, sounds cool. In practice, it was just kind of horribly buggy in Imperator and kind of annoying. I kind of don't want to see that. I don't really care about capturing enemy characters. Maybe I could have the option of killing them if, you know, I win a battle and I get an event like, oh, you captured the enemy commander. What do you want to do with him? Take some money for the ransom instantly, or execute. Something like that could work. Or just you hold on to them and then it will return to the enemy at the end of the war. That could also work. But I think the more interesting idea here is, will we have prisoners of war? Will we have, you have taken 2,000 prisoners of war in this, you know, battle. What do you want to do with them? Execute or you know, have them be sold back to the enemy at the end of the war for a little bit extra payment, something in the peace deal, perhaps, the, you know, the exchange of POWs. It could be interesting. I have no idea how realistic it is for this period, but it could work. It could be fun. Have you considered implementing labor wagons or tabor? I don't know if it is tabor or he's just spelling labor wrong. I don't know. Because labor wagons sounds like an auxiliary support unit. It could totally be called that. I don't know. Is a tabor wagon a thing? Can I just search Google for tabor? A tabor wagon. Wagon fort? Oh, it might. Okay, it might literally be that. Okay, fair enough. But Bohemia has Wagenburg in the Age of Renaissance, which is an auxiliary unit with high initiative that takes a lot less damage. That's cool. That's cool. I like that. Flavorful. Can you purchase supplies from neutral parties during the war? Food access. Yes. Nice. Getting more information about diplomacy. Love that. Love that. Can you capture an enemy supply depot and that their food? Supply depots are destroyed when you lose control of the location. When they're destroyed, the food goes to the province. Do forts function as, or have any synergy with the supply depots? Nothing really. I don't know. On the one hand, I could see it being forts acting as supply depots. I like that idea. You know, forts could act as them, so you could get resupplied from a fort rather than a supply depot. I kind of want that now that I think about it. Yeah, I do want that. I want forts to act as supply depots, just as standard. Are supply depots permanent once they've been built? They're destroyed at the end of the war. And this guy says he's a supply chain analyst. Whether that is a historical, like, discipline, like I am a historian with a focus on supply chains, or whether it's just like, I work for Honda and I am analyzing the supply chains of the various car parts to the Honda factory. I feel like that could go both ways. But yeah, it's either going to be his favorite part of the game or least favorite because it's his actual job. I mean, way to put, you know, the pressure on, I guess. Can the Defender of the Siege order a sortie? It's in the plans for that to be a thing. What happens when you roll a 13 during the siege phase? Is it wall breached? It wasn't specified in the siege phase outcome. It depends on the phase of the siege as to what the dice roll will do. Okay. If you win a siege, does the garrison replenish automatically from local population, or do you have to station some troops there? This is one of the things that I am a little iffy on. Slowly from the local population. I don't agree, right? Because if you are sieging an enemy fort, by definition, that enemy fort is an enemy territory. So the local population is your enemy. I don't think you should be reinforcing that fortification, that garrison, with enemies. I think it needs to be from your own army. I think it just has to be. I really don't like that it just randomly refills from local population. That doesn't seem right to me. And I kind of want that to change. I think it would be very interesting if you basically had to make a choice. Like, do I leave... How much of a garrison do I leave in this fort? Because I need to leave something, or it is just going to stand empty. And if I leave a garrison there, it's going to weaken my army, which may still be needed, for future battles. I feel like that needs to be a part of the game. I don't like that it just automatically refills, especially if it's taking the local population, which is by definition your enemy's population. Like, it feels weird. Will the ignore zone of control? With the ignore zone of control advancement, does it allow you to walk over a fort province instead of as well? Does a wall of forts like the Maginot Line still stop armies? No, you can just walk over it. I hate 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 zone of control. Ignoration. That's totally a word now. I hate being able to ignore a zone of control. I think it's terrible, and I know I had a lot of comments. They were pretty respectful, I will say. You know, they disagreed with me, but they were respectful. So thank you very much for that. Saying that they liked that, you know, that was going to be a thing in the late game, change up the game a bit. I still disagree. I think I still want to use mods to remove that advancement. I think it's terrible. I think it's bad for the game, and I don't ever want to play with this, you know. It's just, I don't know. I really don't like it. Zone of control is important, and even in the late game, especially in the late game, I don't want to lack that. Got some questions that I hope to get answers. Will terrain and climate severely impact the logistics and performance of armies, sieges, and battles? Terrain impacts battles more severely than in EU4. Fantastic. Love that. Climate and terrain impact on sieges and logistics will be talked about later this month. So, you know, maybe a fort placed in a mountain is going to get more defensiveness or something along those lines. But climate and terrain impact on logistics is going to be very interesting. I am looking forward to that Dev Diary. With leader assignment, okay, here we go. This is what I was talking about earlier on in the video, where there was a bit of backlash to the idea that you can only assign leaders to armies in your own location. This one here, people didn't even realize that this was a bad idea yet. And I do think this is a bad idea. Imagine you are fighting a war and you're in enemy territory and your general dies, because that can happen. This basically means you have to march your army back into your own territory to assign a new leader. Or you need to, you know, I'd say with cavalry it's probably the easiest one. Hire a cavalry regiment in your own territory, assign a general to it, and have that cavalry traverse enemy territory to supply it to the army. There wasn't... I don't know. I feel like this could be changed a little bit. I would quite like the commission time, but 12 months seems both way too long and way too arbitrary. This is basically how long it takes for a general to get to an army. Sorry, not about how long it takes him to get to an army. You remove him from a command before 12 months have passed. This was a little bit arbitrary, all right? Can we use a sim instead? Well, assigning and revoking a leader have delays instead based on the army's distance from the capital. And yeah, time logic can be adapted for that. And by owned only as in you need to be in owned territory to assign a general. It's owned and controlled. So you can actually do it in territory that you have sieged, which makes it a slightly bit better, for sure. If I have an army that I want to split to chase down 2 enemy armies and assign each army general, but the army is currently on enemy territory, is there a way to do this without walking all the way back to friendly territory? Yes, you need to get the commander to the army, basically hiring a small stack with a general and have that general march to the army, which I suppose if you want to split and chase down 2 enemy armies, this isn't really viable. Have you considered not having the cooldown period for removing the general from an army, but a warm-up phase, for example, on the first month, so the general doesn't apply any of its bonuses to the army, and then over the months, 2 to 12 of the bonuses tick up from 50 to 100%, while the general settles in with the army? He thinks it's a good idea. Travel time until bonus supplies, X days plus time from capital to location is a good idea. So there is, you know, changes may be being made based on feedback. We love to see that. A little concerned about the solution to the assignments of generals. It's not like historically if a general died during an offensive or overseas, the army would be left leaderless. There's a chain of command, someone would take over to be sent to replace the general. A travel time before bonus supply might be best is... I guess this means that you can assign the general, the bonuses would start applying and apply over time, rather than having no bonuses whatsoever to the army until the general arrives, and then you get the full bonuses. I suppose that could be better. And then here, what happens if your leader dies in combat? Do we have to march the entire army back home just to get one guy, or is there some sort of field promotion system, which I do like the idea of, where one of the subordinates takes charge made from a pool of backup leaders? And Johan's saying, yeah, it kind of sucks. With the new changes I just made for taking time before a leader is effective, the rule is being changed. Like I said, we are having, in real time, Johan changing the game based on user feedback. It's fantastic. That's what we absolutely... we love to see that. Now you need a friendly controlled location to assign a leader. So get into occupied territory, territory you have occupied, then assign a leader. Then it's going to be taking time before the leader is effective, rather than just nothing happening until they get there. But yeah, I think that's awesome that he's responding to that feedback, finding the good ideas, picking through the weeds of bad ideas, and implementing good shit. And I'm a big fan of that. But that is all I have for today for the Dev Diary. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will be back tomorrow with the responses to the Maghreb Tinto maps from Friday. This video is already a bit too long to include that as well. He's just getting a bit more prolific, so I think that's what I'm going to have to do from now on. But yeah, supplies, logistics. I would love to know your thoughts. Was there anything in Johan's responses that surprised you, that you disagreed with, that you think is a phenomenal addition? Let me know in the comments below while someone shouts in my music. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I will be back tomorrow. Subscribe if you haven't already. Write some comments, like the video, all that YouTube stuff, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.